Acting Speaker, I rise today with great honour to contribute to the debate on workplace manslaughter, and I'm particularly conscious that I do this in tribute to a young man from my community who died tragically just last year. I'd like to dedicate my contribution to Dylan Wu, a young man who lived just around the corner from me, to Dylan's family and to Dylan's workmates. This bill delivers on Labor's commitment to introduce new workplace laws in the Occupational Health and Safety Act 2004, and it amends the Workplace Injuries Rehabilitation and Compensation Act 2013 to remove the requirement that the Chief Executive Officer also be a director of the WorkSafe Board in line with best practice governance arrangements. The workplace manslaughter laws will apply where an employer or an officer of the employer engages in conduct that breaches an applicable duty under the Occupational Health and Safety Act 2004, is criminally negligent and causes the death of a worker or a member of the public. The bill aims to hold organisations and officers with the power and the resources to improve safety to account. These laws will apply to employers, self-employed persons and officers of employers. These officers cover senior personnel such as directors and persons who participate in the making of decisions that affect a substantial part of the organisation's business. I'd like to take the opportunity to correct some of the alarmist contributions made yesterday. Organisations will not be liable for the conduct of rogue employees. The workplace manslaughter offence will apply to organisations either directly or through the acts or omissions of an organisation's employees, agents or officers who are acting within the actual or apparent scope of their employment. It's therefore contrary to the rationale of the new laws, as their very intent is to capture conduct that is implicitly or explicitly sanctioned by the company. A rogue employee would not be acting under the actual or apparent authority, so their actions would not be attributed to the employer. The explanatory memorandum explicitly addresses this concern. The clear purpose of the new workplace manslaughter laws is to send a message to employers that putting people's lives at risk in the workplace will not be tolerated. I'm so proud to be a member of a government that once again has done the extraordinary work, the courageous work needed to bring this law to the House for consideration today, and that the Premier has once again demonstrated that workers are front and centre of our agenda. Again, I commend the work of the Attorney-General as her role as the Minister for Workplace Safety for her willingness to take on reforms that might make some uncomfortable. And on behalf of the workers of Cranbourne, I thank you both. I'd like to take the opportunity to again pay tribute to the ministerial staff and the public servants diligently and with great passion working alongside the Minister in this government, undertaking the detailed policy analysis required to bring such an important bill to us here today. I pay credit to the Workplace Manslaughter Implementation Task Force who helped in the development of these tough new laws, and of course the Parliamentary Secretary for Workplace Safety, the member for Sydenham, who led this work and whose contribution yesterday was outstanding. I commend the work of the Trades Hall Council and particularly Luke Lakari for his leadership. We wouldn't be here today discussing this legislation without you, Luke, and your comrades. And I'm proud to hear of the contributions of my colleagues, the member for Wendouree, who has taken the campaign on with fervour as a way of remembering those grieving families from her community. Proud of the member for Buninyong and Melton, and of course Ringwood and Geelong for their heartfelt and deep insights. First-hand experience of an emergency worker like the member for Melton is a powerful driver for change. And I join with others in offering my heartfelt and deepest condolences to the families of Jack Brownlee and Charlie Hawkins. Your loss is unfathomable. In creating this new workplace manslaughter offence, the government brings workplace penalties in line with a proportionate penalty that reflects the consequences of the offence. This is tough new legislation, and it is there for only one reason: because no one deserves to die at work. Under these tough new laws being debated today, employers who negligently cause a death will face fines of up to $16.5 million, and individuals will face up to 20 years in jail. Of course, there's a carrot that goes with the stick. In addition to these tough laws, in August, a new workplace health and safety campaign targeting employers who risk workers' lives was launched. More Inspectors, More Inspections campaign highlights the consequences for employers who fail to protect the health and safety of their workers. Acting Speaker, I pause to reflect that the number of people who have died so far this year is 20, but it's really not a number, is it? It's not a number because it's people. 20 grieving families, 20 workplaces, 20 funerals. Because that's what we're talking about, the people who said goodbye to their families and drove or cycled or walked or caught the train to work. Unfortunately, in the short time I've been the member for Cranbourne, people in my community have died and families are still grieving. I'd like to now spend my last couple of minutes talking about people who live in my community and in particular pay my respects again to the family of Dylan Wu and reflect on the extraordinary generosity of community members, Dylan's family and work colleagues. I'll pay my deepest respects now to the union movement again and particularly to the AMWU who have supported Dylan's family in the time since he died at work. To Tony Mav, I say thank you. Dylan was a 20-year-old apprentice boilermaker when he died at work. And I'd like to take the opportunity to read from a letter I received from his friend and workmate, Curtie. I worked for Marshall Letley and Proprietary Limited and I was a close workmate of Dylan Wu. Many of you would be aware of the well-reported catastrophe, apprentice death in the workplace last year. I, for one, have many times had to relive this nightmare. The apprentice's name was Dylan Wu. What happened to me? How was my suffering? The trauma that I suffered on the date of the horrible accident is so horrendous that I wish the government would do something that will put a stop to the horrors ever recurring. My life shattered on that day. I became a complete wreck. Each day I was getting more and more depressed, a state of shock on the verge of losing my sanity, going mad with the persistent current nightmares, reviving the condition of death of my good friend Dylan Wu. I can no longer cope with life and had been suicidal at times. I could picture repeatedly the face and body of Dylan, turning in the grey colour caused by the poisonous gas in that confined environment. I keep reliving the attempts of my colleagues trying in a desperate move to resuscitate him, but to no avail. The managers fainted at the sight of his transformed body caused by the poisonous gas. I want these traumatic nightmares to go away. I'm no longer able to relate socially with my family, my wife and my son. Still today, I relive the trauma of those days and I feel ashamed in front of my wife and son. I had stopped seeing my friends and I had started living a solitary life. I'm pleased to learn that the state government is taking steps to put in place a very strong deterrent to employers for them to be held accountable for catastrophes such as this. So many employers are reluctant to adhere to work safety regulations. The usual defence is the cost involved. Well, what is the cost to my friend Dylan? He lost his life. No sum of money will be able to bring his life back, and the high price is too high. Life is precious, and I praise the Minister for Workplace Safety for bringing this harsh legislation to the House. I'm not looking forward to employers going to jail. All I want is for them to be responsible, not to cut the cost or expense of safety, and in particular the lack of safety that may cause manslaughter. This is a powerful deterrent, a jail term. I received a letter of termination dated the 14th of November 2018 from my employer. I wanted to make sure that the person that I represent, Curtie's words were able to be recorded here in this place and able to be recorded so that the community can see that the cost of workplace manslaughter, the cost is so high, not just for the family but for everyone involved. Last week I went and visited Dylan's parents because I wanted to make sure that they were okay with me talking about him, and the grief that is on their face is so clear. They live in Limbrook, not far from where I live. The parents and the sister have just endured their first anniversary. So this law is about the people who have been left behind and the people who we can make sure are kept safe. This is not about industry groups or employer groups who are concerned about the cost. I think, as Curtie put it so well, life is precious. I was also fortunate to have met those families from Ballarat, and I pay tribute to them all.
Order. The